The Vintage Roast with Dan Ahdoot and Jessica Montes.
Everyone, welcome to The Vintage Roast. I'm your host, Dan Ahdoot.
And I'm Jessica Montes.
Boy, do we have a show for you. I'm so excited about this because I've actually never seen this episode, and it's probably the most iconic episode of vintage food TV ever. It is the Grande Dame, Julia Childs, making her most famous dish, the dish that put her on the map, the Boeuf Bourguignon. Boeuf Bourguignon. Okay. And I can't believe I haven't seen this. I'm very excited that we even got this footage, but it's get ready for some black and white. Jessica, any thoughts before we get started?
No.
No, Jessica just likes weird shit. Shows with dead rats and whatnot. No, this is classic, baby. This is an old Porsche 911.
Is this like Gordon Ramsay's that I just completely blanked on it. You know his signature dish, the
beef Wellington?
Yeah. Is it like his beef Wellington?
100%. That's actually a very good comparison. This is her version of it's very different actually recipe-wise, but yes, it's like those old SAT things. This Julia Childs is to the beef bourguignon as Gordon Ramsay is to the beef Wellington.
Okay.
We got through that. So, without further ado, here we go.
Here we go.
The following program is made possible with the assistance of a grant from SF Green Stamps.
Put it in my veins with that old cartoon
Boeuf
chef hat.
Bourguignon, French beef stew in red wine. We're going to serve it with braised onions and mushrooms and a wine dark sauce. It's a perfectly
Nothing looks
dish.
good in black and white, old school. I mean, who was watching this saying, I need to make this? The French chef. The best thing about Julia Child wouldn't have been able to have existed nowadays because she's not French.
Right.
And they call this cultural appropriation, yada, yada. And we would have never heard of beef bourguignon. We would never heard of Julia Childs. This is my argument. This is why I'm pro-cultural appropriation.
I'm Julia Child. Welcome to the French Chef and the first show on our series on French cooking. We're going to make Boeuf Bourguignon, beef stew and red wine.
Oh, this is like her first episode ever.
To begin
Really?
our series on because
Yeah.
we showed you so many useful things about French cooking. How to brown meat, how to braise onions, how to saute mushrooms, how to make a wonderful sauce. And you make a Boeuf Bourguignon just the way you make any other kind of a stew, like chicken coq au vin. You can make lamb this way or veal this way. And now here's our beef. And I've made quite a few beef stews lately getting ready for this program. And I've tried several different cuts, some from the leg called the top round and the bottom
She's
round.
very in control for someone
From all
who this
the
is like
foods
her
I've
first
made,
show
I find
ever.
that I like chuck the best. So these are various pieces of. This is called the chuck tender, and it comes from the shoulder blade up here.
Not sure that
Make it
knife
an
is in
awfully
a
nice
good position.
stew because
Yeah.
the meat doesn't get
Yeah,
stringy.
not good knife,
And this is called the undercut
oh,
of
she's
the
like
chuck.
holding
it
It's just
backwards.
the continuation of the ribs along
Stabbing-wise.
here where it gets up to your neck. And here's another piece of it. This is
Literally all
pumpkin
those
meat. And
just
that's awfully good. That's sort of
look
from
like
the short
wet
part of the
rags
ribs of the
in black and
And
white. They just
you
look
cut
like
up the meat into pieces about
gross.
like that.
no one knows what you're
We're
cutting
gonna have-
into.
we're gonna
It
serve this for 6 people.
could be Play-Doh.
We want
This
to
looks like
have
Play-Doh.
3 pounds of meat. I usually count on 1 pound of boneless meat for 2 to 3 people. But if you have a good appetite, you want to have a little more than that. And then as you can make this stew way ahead of time.
1 pound of boneless meat for 2 to 3 people. That's old school 1950s shit. Now it's like 3 pounds per person.
Until it's brown, and then we're going to put it in this pot, into which we're going to cook it in the oven. But before you saute anything, you want to make sure that you have it good and brown, good and dry. So I just take a whole lot of paper towels like that.
True.
And just
The
dry
reason
the
you
meat
want
off.
it good and
If you
dry
have
is
the meat
because
dry, you can't brown it because
you can't brown it.
it's as though it were steaming.
Yes, it would be
There's water
steaming in the
on
water.
the bottom of
You're
the
right,
meat,
Julia.
And
I'm glad I'm here to check your work.
So you get it good and dry like that.
You got to still her thunder. Dan.
Yeah.
Saute this in oil. I usually use a light olive oil, which I get at my supermarket. And we need just enough oil to keep the bottom of the pan.
I like that she's using olive oil because it became very out of fashion in the 90s and the early 2000s to use olive oil at high heat because they're like, oh, the scientists say that at high heat it's not. It's like, fuck you. This is the way it's supposed to be. Sorry, I'm trying to curse less, everybody. So every time I curse, I owe $1 to the Julia Child Foundation.
Darken in color.
Or I owe $1 to the fund that's trying to
4 or 5 minutes to brown.
Undo the besmirching of the Frugal Gourmet's name.
Because if the pan gets crowded, then the meat.
His good name.
Start a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
I find these wooden spatulas.
See, she's moving it way too quickly. It should not be moved. Just leave it for a while, Julia. Let it chill out. All right? If you were really French, you would have known that.
Keep moving it around so it won't stick.
No, you don't keep moving it so it won't stick. If you leave it, it won't stick, Julia. Man. Oh, no. Maybe we shouldn't be watching this, Jessica. This is going to make me hate my hero. Not hate, but realize that my hero's a fraud, goddammit.
Because you just add the oil as you need it.
Maybe that pan you do, like that's a certain pan where you do have to keep.
No, Jessica, you don't know what you're talking about. All right, don't chime in here on certain pans.
It's clearly not a non-stick pan.
It's definitely not a non-stick pan. But even on all the more reason, on a stainless steel, you really need to let it give it a real crisp. I mean, now we just have to take her word for it that it's brown. It all looks brown already, Julia. It looked brown when you were cutting it.
Getting too hot, I'll turn it down. You just keep turning it around like that. Now, if you're doing chicken, you do it exactly the same way. If you're doing a lamb stew is awfully good and it's not expensive. You do it exactly the same way. So while you're watching me do this, remember you could do lamb or veal or chicken. Coq au vin is just the same as Boeuf Bourguignon. Bourguignon means Burgundy, and that's where this dish was invented in Burgundy, and they usually use Burgundy wine with it. But you can use any kind of nice red wine, as you see. There, that's just about browned enough. Now we'll put this, as it's brown, into the casserole.
So do you believe it's brown enough with the time that was given?
No, I don't think so. I like to get a real nice crust on it. But, who am I to argue with the Grand Dame? I'm also a fan of doing this all in that big pot that she's putting it all into. I brown it in that. Then I'll take the meat out and put it in some sort of bowl. And then I'll put in the onions. Like, she's going to do everything in that saute pan and then put it into the stock pot. I think it's more fun to just do it all in the stock pot.
Sort of brown bit here that's left over from the browning. And this is part of your treasure of cooking. It's called a glaze, and we're going to deglaze it with our red wine. We're going to use about 3 cups, or about 2/3 the bottle. And this is called deglazing, when you pour the wine in and you're scraping up all this lovely brown coagulated juice, which gives
so if you let that thing brown like crazy, you get a lot more of this stuff for the juice.
Now we just pour that in.
Why doesn't she know that?
I hate to tell Julia that she's a goddamn fraud.
Barely covered. It's called
this is a vintage roast exclusive. We are calling out Julia Child.
Just about 2 cups.
Is this even her dish?
Yeah, who?
And you can use what's very nice is always a homemade beef stock. But if you don't have that, you can use canned beef bouillon, which is very good too. Don't use canned consommé because that tends to be a little bit sweet.
I feel like a lot of those
The
chefs
rest of our
like just
flavorings
kind of go
here.
out, like out of breath.
We're going to put in a little bit
She's
of
just,
tomato paste.
you know, as a woman in the
All about
50s, she
a
just had it up to
tablespoon.
here. I just can't.
About like that.
I can't take it anymore. See, if she
And
was
then
in the
we're gonna put
movie,
in
this is
some
when a guy would come up
bay
to her and
leaf,
slap her in the
thyme,
face
for
and be like,
about
"Get a hold of yourself."
half a teaspoonful. And a bay leaf.
I love those old movies where they would faint just like, at the sight of something dramatic.
Apropos of nothing, just faint.
Get
Get a hold of yourself.
Imported bay leaves. You can get them at almost any supermarket. Then, because
I
this
love
is
it. Like,
a
it's very cool to
bourguignon,
see like
we have
things that
garlic.
no one knew about
So
back then,
here's
like
the garlic
bay
pepper.
leaves.
Just
She's
put
like,
the
bay
whole
leaves are this
garlic in
exotic
there and
thing
go,
that you can get at the supermarket.
That's awfully easy, then you don't get it over your hands. And now, our stew is just coming to the simmer here. We want to give it a little taste to see whether we've got enough salt in it. You want to be very careful not to oversalt at this point because the sauce is going to reduce.
Ooh, close-up
It
cam.
doesn't taste good now at all because the wine is raw.
I like it, man. Old school. You can just
Just a little
take it
bit
from the
of salt.
spoon and put it right back
Put
in
in,
with the same spoon.
Oh, about a half.
This is before bacteria was even discovered.
Now that's at the simmer.
People would just like
and I'm
die
gonna
of the
put it in
Spanish
oven.
flu and not know why.
Yeah.
I love it.
Now this is going to go in a 325 oven, and it should cook.
That kind of stuff just grosses me out. I don't know. I've always been kind of a germ phobe.
Oh,
So
well,
I'm
then
like,
you were not meant for the
Once it's in,
1950s,
except
baby.
checking the oven to make sure that it isn't bubbling and boiling. You don't have to look at it anymore. Beef takes about 3 to 4 hours to cook, depending on.
when I was a kid, if somebody took a bite off of
Lamb
my
takes
fork,
about
I just
2
wouldn't eat the
hours
rest of
and-
my food.
Really?
And only 30 minutes.
Oh my
No,
God.
done the same way.
Look at you now, and now
while that's
you're
cooking, we're
co-hosting
gonna
a
do
food
the
show.
Braised onions that go with this.
Braised onions, very very classic
You see, with this kind
beef
of a stew, you
bourguignon
cook so
side
much ahead of time.
accompaniment.
If you can get the beef all done ahead of time and the onions, and then all you have to do at the end is just the final fixings. Now, these braised onions are something that you can do. They're awfully good served with a stew, or you can.
She's out of breath a lot.
serve
You're
them
right.
as a plain vegetable with,
She's fucking her car. This is her cardio for the day. This is the 1950s, man. They didn't go to the gym. Any amount of movement was like full on,
the easy
like
way.
level
I've got
4
some
heart
of
rate.
these children. I just wanted to show you how you did it.
Yeah, it's like she's doing a jazzercise class.
Yeah,
She
she
was
was-
jazzercise.
this was
water.
this was CrossFit
Take all your
for
onions,
back then.
Put them in the water and wait till the water comes back to the boil again. And then peel them. And when you peel them, we want to cook these whole, so we want to leave just as much
These onions are
together as
are
possible. Now, you see how that
super
begins to get
annoying to
soft.
peel. They
Now,
are,
because we want
what are
them
they
to stay
called?
whole,
Fuck.
Scallions?
you've got your root
No, those are not
in
scallions.
here.
Scallions are the ones
And
with the
you take
green.
your
These are
little
just like
knife
these bulbs.
and you just pierce
She
a
probably
little
said
hole
it,
in
and we
You'll
were
see
making
how
fun of
quickly
her.
that goes, but be careful that you just shave off
Shallots?
either end
No,
like
they're not
that.
shallots. Just Google. Can you Google
There. Now,
beef
pop the little
bourguignon
hole in.
onion type?
Then there are peeled onions, and we're going to cook them in a pan like that. You want to have a pan that will just hold them. You don't want them piled on top of each other. Then we put in the butter
Pearl.
adds flavor.
Pearl onions. That's it.
You
Yeah.
want about that.
They're
about a
soup. You can
tablespoon
actually
of butter
buy
like
them
that.
peeled like almost everywhere now because they're so goddamn annoying
And then we
to
want to bring them
to peel.
just to cover
They're
them.
wonderful sides to eat, but they're
I don't
really
have a
annoying to
cover. I'll
cook.
use this and pretend we have one.
You could also
Very,
use
very
small
slow
shallots.
simmer for about 25 minutes until
Yeah.
they're
Not
tender.
peeled.
Now, as we don't have
On her
25
recipe.
minutes, I've got some that have already been cooked.
Oh,
I
you're
cooked
looking
these
at her
last
recipe?
night, so you can see you can do this all ahead of time, and they're done when they're soft. But as you see, they've kept their
So she just
shape.
braised it in water and butter.
Now, when they're done, then you just put them aside.
Interesting.
And for what? I missed it because I was Googling. What did
She
she put?
braised
them the
the
night before
the
if you
pearl
want.
onions
Now we're going to do the
in water
mushrooms.
and butter. That was it.
Oh.
This is actually, if anyone's thinking of making this, it's a perfect
Now,
dinner party thing to make because you can, and Julia said this, I'm just repeating, but you can make everything the day before and have it all done. In fact, stews are better the next day anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you just kind of reheat everything, and you can still hang out with everyone in your party.
But this one
And the house will be
a little bit
clean.
fresher
Yeah, the house will
than
be clean.
that one, and you can tell because the stem is attached to the cap like that. This one is still fresh. If it were not fresh at all, the cap would have spread way out, but it still has that nice curl, so you know it is fresh. And
yeah, we can tell what you're talking about with this grainy black and white footage. It's like talking about the nuances of mushroom freshness.
You always want to wash them because there may be a little sand. And if the cap and stem are open this way, you always want to take the stem out like that. With this one, you don't have to.
Why not?
Then you wash them.
Because it's covered internally. It doesn't have the gills exposed gills.
Lift them up with your hands, and any sand that's in them will drop down to the very bottom. Then, when they're all washed,
ooh, interesting. This is not the current orthodoxy on how to clean mushrooms. They say that you shouldn't clean them with water because it just waterlogs them. You should just take a paper towel, get it wet, and just like basically rub everything on the outside.
They've got to be absolutely dry.
And why?
Because when you clean it with water, they just absorb all the water and they just get really bloated. And
if they're wet, they're not going to brown.
And if they're wet, they're not going to brown.
Washing machines and everything, you don't have to be upset about using.
This seems like a lot of work to just clean those two mushrooms.
Yeah.
We in this stew, we don't want sliced mushrooms. We want quartered mushrooms. If they're sliced, they disappear a little bit too much. So to quarter them, you just take the cap and do like that. And then we want the stem to look like the cap, so that we just cut it on the bias like that. There,
pro tip, the bias move. I love that cute little knife she's using.
If you have a great big mushroom, you might want.
That's the type of knife I use to cut everything.
They'll all be about the same size, and then your stem is cut on the bias.
You're like butchering chickens with it.
Now our mushrooms are all ready, and we're going to saute them. I'm going to use. Oh, wait a minute. I'll get rid of this. I'm going to use one of these patent no-stick pans. I like them very much because nothing sticks on them, just as they say, and I use it like an ordinary pan.
Whoa.
Oil in it. And
non-stick was a thing.
These are mushrooms as to what they
Why didn't you just use that first time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the main reason is because on a stainless steel, you'll get a lot more of that browning, and the crusty stuff will stick on it. So you can use that for the deglazing. Whereas with this, all that crusty stuff wouldn't have happened. It would have been stuck on the meat, you know?
In other words,
I see.
able to heat up a little hotter.
The more you know.
It's hot enough, and you can always tell how hot it is by looking at the butter foam. So that's a very easy way of telling. And when it's foaming up like this, it means that it isn't hot enough. And as soon as the foam begins to subside, the butter is hot, and you can then saute. So it always takes a little while. You just have to be patient and wait. But you can look at that butter foam now. See, it's still foaming, so you just still have to wait. But if you try to saute something in butter that isn't hot enough, it just isn't. They aren't going to brown. So you have to be a little bit patient if you want success. Now that butter's hot enough. The foam has gone down. So in go the mushrooms. Well, almost. Now, I let them sit for a while over good hot heat. Then what's nice about this pan, you can just shake them like that. And that takes about 2 or 3
What is the
minutes.
patch on her shirt? Is that her Julia Child logo for her new show on her first
I
ad?
don't know. That's a great question. I thought it was like a flower of some sort. Is it a patch?
It looks like a patch.
Them a little bit so that they'll take on flavor.
But yeah, maybe it is a flower.
If you put them
You
right
know what I'm
into the
surprised
same
about with
raw,
this recipe? I don't see her using any herbs. Like no thyme, no rosemary, no nothing.
Now, this is about all that you can put in.
Just a bay leaf?
besides a pan.
Just
You
a
had
fucking
twice as
crusty
much,
ass
you
bay
have to
leaf
do
she threw in.
2 sets of them. Because if you put more than this in, they'd start steaming, and then the juice would come out.
The juice.
And a properly sauteed mushroom doesn't have any juice.
I wonder if you can even tell the difference if she put the bay leaf in or not.
Those
Like,
are just
would you be
very, very light
Can't tell the.
brown.
Oh, you mean taste-wise?
Yeah.
Now set them aside.
You know, so the thing is, fresh bay leaves have a ton of flavor. So with a fresh bay leaf, sure. One dry bay leaf, I don't know. Like,
See, these
that's
you
why
can
I
do
think
ahead
I
of
like
time, so if you were
5x the
making
amount of
food
bay
you wanted,
leaves when I'm
or even
cooking.
the night before.
Unless I had
You
fresh
have
bay
your
leaves,
mushrooms
which
ready
you
and
can
your onions
find,
ready.
but
And now our
dry bay
stew
leaves are
is cooked long
pretty
enough, so we're gonna
tasteless.
get it
Like
out of
you
the
gotta
oven.
pump them up.
Yeah, I feel like it would be pointless.
Yeah. Ain't no way you're tasting
Now
one
this
fucking bay
stew
leaf in there.
is one that I've had in the oven.
I have
for
a trick when I
about
make white
3
rice.
hours.
I put like a little star
It's
anise
about
in it.
ready. Now, this other one that we
Ooh.
had
It's
in
really
the
good.
oven,
And then you take it
would
out
take
like
3
right
hours
after it's
more,
done
so you
boiling,
have
and
to
once
wait.
it's cooked, just take it out right away, and you still get the flavor
Now comes
of
the
that
very
little anise.
That's very Yan Can Cook of you.
thing
I
about
bet you Yan
making
does
the
that.
sauce. Here,
I don't think I've ever.
to
This is
the
a
easiest
vintage
way
roast
to degrease the sauce, because it's
confession
finer,
right
finer
now.
flavoring,
I don't think I've
is to
ever
pour the
ever
whole thing
cooked with star anise.
into a saucepan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which we'll do here.
You got to
Always
try the
Okay,
find
rice
a
trick.
towel awfully useful to have.
Okay,
put
now
it
she's
around me.
straining
There.
the beef into a colander.
Then I'll let the sauce drain out, and then we simply put the stew back into the casserole. There. Now we should have about 2.5
Why?
to 3
She's
cups
using
of sauce
so
here.
like the cleanup on this
We do
thing is going to
just
be
about.
insane. She's used
And what we do
75
now
pots
is
and
the
pans thus
final
far.
flavoring of it. We also want to take off any fat which has accumulated. If you made this a day or two ahead of time, you could put it all in the ice box, and then the fat would come up.
In the ice box.
In this case, we're just going to.
They didn't even have
skim it
freezers
off
back
the
then.
top.
The ice box.
Unless you're on one of those fat-free diets, you want to leave a little bit in because it gives a very good flavor.
People were on fat-free diets back then?
I guess so.
Or
That
it
was
isn't really
that got me too. I didn't know that. I thought it was like, no, you ate and drank whatever you wanted and lived until
Not very
30.
good. I think it needs a little more salt, and it needs some pepper. You don't usually put the pepper into a sauce until just at the end, because pepper sometimes can get a little bit bitter. So this hasn't had any, so this is the pepper going in now. Now I'll just taste it again to be sure. Always remember to taste things, because you can spend.
Here we go. Taste and put the spoon right back in, baby. Here we go. This is for Jessica.
Ugh, and the rest of the juice on the spoon too. She just stuck right back in. Didn't even drink it all.
Or you could put in a little more tomato paste or a little more.
Oh.
Oh no.
Yeah.
In this case, we fortunately find it's just right. Now for the thickening of it.
Butter.
This is a very simple French thickening called a beurre manier, or a butter and flour paste. Like that. And then we work the butter and the flour together.
I mean, just fucking add the butter and the
It makes
flour
what's
separately
called a
into the
paste, and
sauce.
it's a very quick thickening. It's not.
It's an unnecessary step that
haute cuisine
now we have
thickening,
7 more
but
things to clean
you always
in a
use
dishwasher.
for a stew like
This is
this.
before dishwashers. I have to do this by hand.
Oh yeah.
Typical of either the flour paste in and beat it up. These wire whips are awfully useful.
Wire whisks. It's like they just came out. They were using like
Then we put
they were
it
using
over
like
heat
wooden
again.
twigs before.
We want it to bring
This is
to the
newfangled wired whisks.
boil. And it just needs to boil for about a second. And while that's coming to the boil, we put our braised onions in and our sauteed mushrooms.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense why she couldn't have just added that to this bowl.
That's the thing. It's like everything is being done separately. You could have done everything in the same exact bowl. Like, for example, you could have just braised those onions when you were braising the beef. Like, have the onions in there too. And then just add the mushrooms in later, because they don't need as much cooking time. Like, it's a lot easier to make this a one-pot meal instead of a 20-pot meal, which is how she
do
did
it right
this.
to this point. And then when it's
Like,
cool,
yes, it'll taste a little
cover it
different,
in
whatever, but is
refrigerator.
it
Be
worth
sure never to cover
that
anything when
nuanced
it's
difference?
I bet it's not that
Maize
different.
sour, that
The
often
flavor.
will make a lovely chicken stew, and then cover it up, and it turns sour, and it's just because you've covered it before it's cold. But we're going to serve this right away, so you want to heat it up just a little bit. Because you want the flavor of the onions.
She just put the lid on to move it over to a burner.
Yeah.
Blend themselves with the soup.
Yeah.
That's going a little too hard, so I'll put it at the side. There. About 2 or 3 minutes, and if you'd had it in the icebox, you heat it up very slowly and baste the meat with the sauce.
She's got like a modern oven, but she still has an ice box. Like, when the hell were freezers invented?
For about 2 or 3
I don't know. Let me look.
until everything was tender and hot through. So we'll pretend we're doing that. You see that the wonderful thing about this, so you say, oh, I can't do anything that takes 4 hours to cook. It's impossible.
1930s.
See, you've done preliminaries done. You can put it all together, put it away. Or you can cook it the next time, or you can cook it the next day if you want. But it's just a lovely stew. It's a peasant dish, and peasants don't do simple, hearty.
Clear your throat, Julia. Just get it out.
Ready to serve.
Peasants don't.
Now, this is going to be a very nice dinner that we have. We have our Boeuf Bourguignon, and we have what the French usually always serve with it, which are boiled potatoes with parsley on them, and a very nice green salad of romaine, and as always, the usual French bread. You're going to see French bread on all these meals because the French.
I have a feeling she went to France and then had this meal and then asked the chef how they made it and then claimed it.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
She did this every French dish. She she did like a summer internship in Paris. And was like, I'm taking all this shit with me. I'm taking it all back.
Because if you had a very old, delicate wine, the stew being very robust would kill the wine. And when you're serving wine, you want to think of how it goes with the meal, or how the beef and the wine marry. Because if this is robust, the wine must be rather robust. Now, next time, we're going to do French onion soup, gratiné. It's one of the really great French soups, and it's fun to make and wonderful to eat. And I hope that you will be with us. And I hope also that you feel that you can make a good stew after having seen this one. As you remember, you can use lamb, chicken, veal as well.
Don't you snicker. Don't you snicker at the grand dame of cooking.
I was just thinking how many pans it would take to make French onion soup. And if I could find that video of her making it.
Get the butter hot. Remember how the
We'll
foam
guess.
is supposed to look. And don't
I'd
crowd
say
the
4,
pan. Don't
3.
crowd the pan either when you're
3 or
making
4.
beef, when you're sautéing beef, or you won't get it brown. This is Julia Child. Welcome to the French Chef, and see you next time. Bon appetit.
You know, the thing is, I will say, there's a lot of, let's see, what do we got? We got Julia Child.
Julia Child is co-author of the book, Mastering the Art of French Cooking.
Directed by Russell Morash. Ruth Lockwood, okay. These all sound like normal names. For fun name.
No French names.
No French people, not one.
No credit to the French.
Kitchen appliances.
Accessories and furniture, courtesy of Design Research.
General Electric Co. WGBH
This has
TV.
been a WGBH videotape production.
Videotape production. So, iconic. That is the first episode of Julia Child ever making beef bourguignon. You can tell she's got a little bit of cobwebs that she's trying to figure out her way around the camera, but she's got a likability about her. I see the magnetism. I see why it's fun to watch her. Also, it's kind of nuts to think that that was her first show. There's no cuts. There were no like real big cuts or anything, right?
Right.
Was there there wasn't a commercial break, was there?
No, she did it all. It seems
she did it all in one take, like those action directors who do the whole scene in one take.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
It's very impressive. She seems very at ease. You know, at the end, she seemed to like not know how to stick the landing and was just kind of going a little too long. And also, You want to think of the fork, the kind of fork that you serve the food with wants to be sharp, but not too sharp. And there's enough to stab the meat, but not enough to break the skin. And you could the director was like, just fucking cut it, Julia, we're done. Get out. But very fun to watch. It's very, very fun little window into probably what was the first ever, American food star before the Food Network, before anything. She was number one.
Yeah, that's
pretty cool.
Very
pretty cool to see. All right. Well, until next time, bon appetit. Also, I don't hire any French people. I've killed all the ones whose recipes I've stolen. You can't find them.
Thanks for watching The Vintage Roast. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, and tell what your favorite dish was in the comments.